again, Marine Bio. It's Ms. Shuttler here, and we're talking about another cool marine intertidal invertebrate. We are looking at the giant Plumose anemone. Now this guy is pretty small. They can get a lot bigger than this. Oh, and he's doing a great example of pulling himself in. So this is a species that a lot of people don't even realize a lot of the times is actually an animal. People tend to think that these guys are plants or something along those lines, but in fact they're an animal. So they live in the intertidal zone, and you can really tell that because they've got a lot of those really cool adaptations that help them to live in the intertidal zone. So what he's doing right here is you can see how they can basically take all the water that's inside their body and squish it out and then curl themselves in, so that way they can survive those low tide periods. There's one right here. So they can survive those low tide periods just kind of all tucked away like this. But then when they're covered in water and they're thinking they want to eat, they might pop themselves out like this guy. He's a little tiny one. And that's when they have those sort of frilly parts that are sort of sticking out. And that is actually how they eat. So what they're doing is basically taking their, I'll demonstrate, I'll be an anemone. They're taking their little frilly parts right there. And then when you've ever have touched an anemone, you'll know that they feel kind of sticky. It almost feels like Velcro. They sort of stick themselves to you. And what they're doing when they do that is they're actually trying to eat you. So they have something called nematocysts that they use to sort of send out a little stinger, and that helps to grab onto things that they want to eat. So they're going to be eating those small things that float along in the water while the tide is high. They're not detritivores, so they're not going to be like the California sea cucumber where they move along the bottom of the ground, because they're going to be stuck to a hard surface, and they're going to be kind of like, you know, sticking out their little plumes right there to catch whatever happens to be floating by. So they do rely a little bit on luck, but they can actually move. They are animals and they can move. Their only requirement is really that they need to have a hard surface to be able to stick onto, so that when the water's going up and down, they can kind of hang on and stick tight. But they can actually move. They can detach themselves, and when they move, they kind of look like a big worm bouncing along until they find another hard surface that they can stick onto. Scientific name for these guys is Metridium farcimen. Metridium farcimen. And these guys also, if I haven't said it already, they have a really similar range as a lot of the other marine intertidal invertebrates that we've been looking at. You can find them all the way from in cold waters, all the way from up in Alaska, along the coast, all the way down to Baja.
And the easiest way to tell them apart from the other anemones is if you look at their tentacles. They have these very fine tentacles, like this. And these fine tentacles is what Michelle was talking about when they grab on and they try to eat me, like this one's trying to do currently. The other anemone species have these larger tentacles that tend to be more singular. And so when you're looking at them to tell them apart, you're looking for the ones that have these fine plumes, hence the plumose, sticking out at the top.
And if we move over here, one of the other ones that are really common to see are these guys called aggregating anemones. These guys get really big, so here's where you can really see those big ones, those big tentacles. And then also, I don't know if we can get a shot, but you often, oh, it's really sticky to me. They often have these sort of red sides or striped sides, like this guy right here. Sometimes they're called a Christmas tree anemone. But that is the aggregating anemone. So Plumose anemone, fine frilly tentacles, aggregating anemones, big tentacles.